when I made this or I put this office together, I put it together in the summertime,
Mm-hmm.
and I put all the bookshelves up, and I didn't realize that this is stupid. I put a bookshelf in front of the heater blower,
Oh,
so the heat does come down.
so your books are warm.
Oh, they're on fire. That side of the camera is a disaster, and no camera will ever pick it up.
Well, there you go, friends. Welcome to Monday morning. It is freezing. We had a little bit of snow. It's the Dom and Gabe show. We chat together Monday mornings, and we're just sharing it with you, and we did not prep at all. It's inauguration day if you're in the United States, and we have no idea what's going to come next, so we're probably going to watch that around midday today. But how was your weekend, Gabe?
It was good. It was a really good weekend. Yeah, we just a lot of family time, a lot of relaxing, reading some new books,
Yeah, let's
watching
talk
some
about
shows.
that.
Yeah. So we
Yeah,
had some
let's
fun.
get into all of that. We're going to talk movies and shows and thoughts. We have a weekly challenge that we keep coming back to and walking around, and we are almost a full month into our New Year's resolutions. Be interesting to sort of check up a little bit on that, see how we're
Yeah.
doing. So let's get into the show. It is also most likely that this is going to be the first episode on our own brand new channel. I'm migrating this away from my personal channel to being our own sort of thing, because it's such a cool set of conversations that
Yeah.
it needs to be its own thing. So welcome to
Starting
everybody
to
who's probably watching this for the first time on our new channel. That's the plan.
Yeah, it's starting to get enough meat where we can give it its own plate to be
Yeah, it's
enjoyed
starting to get its
upon.
own life. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, this whole Hunter Blathers thing. So, okay, let's talk about the weekend. What did you read? You said you were reading some new books.
Yeah.
What did you watch?
Reading this, so finished my old book, reading this new book, Air by Saba Tahir, I think it's called.
Okay.
Or pronouncing
Is
her
that
name
another
right?
one of those Arabian? Is that like a comic? Or it's a
No,
novel?
this is a novel, and it's a fantasy novel. It's set into another place in time, and I just something I wanted to talk to you about because I love big fantasy. Obviously, we love Lord of the Rings, love Dune.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing is the first like chapter or two, for me, it's hard to like get in. I know there's something worth there,
Mm-hmm.
but it starts off with like, I won't say anything from this book. I'll just make something up. She grabs her Talil and you're already like, what is that? And it's so you have to learn all the different terminologies for this new world. And for
Mm-hmm.
me, the first two chapters, it's
Mm-hmm.
always like I can't make very clear pictures, but
Right.
by chapter 3, I can start to get it. And what I needed for this one, I need to listen to the audiobook to
Mm-hmm.
get some of the names down because I'm like, I know
Oh,
I'm saying
okay.
this name right or this wrong. Her, the main character is AIZ.
Hey, Aiz?
That's how so I was like, let me just roll with that. Basically, that's how it's pronounced in the audiobook. But
Okay.
it's just one of those things where like, I don't know, I'm just gonna read it and just keep going. So I don't know. Does that ever come to you like when you're reading like I don't know if it's considered high fantasy
High fantasy
or
usually has a lot of lore drops
yeah,
and world building and stuff. You ever
it's
see that
beautiful, but
screenshot from Shutter Island where, what's the main actor? DiCaprio.
yeah.
He's kind of red-eyed and he leans forward and he goes, "What the hell's going on here?"
That's what I feel like
It's the
looking
same
around
sort of
like,
thing.
what is going on? Yeah. So
Yeah.
by chapter 3, you've heard the main ones and you kind of okay, I
Mhm.
get who the main families are, but it
Mhm.
starts with you're like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you have any
I
like
get
what
the
do you
same.
do? Yeah.
I get the same sort of thing. Usually when that starts happening, I have to go back and reread the blurb. Like, what am I
Yes.
in for? Like, I bought a $2 book from the bargain bin, and I only bought it because Brandon Sanderson said on the cover,
Oh, there
"This
you go.
was awesome."
Yeah.
I thought, okay, and then I grabbed it. By the time I got home, I found out this was book 3 in a
Oh,
trilogy. It's like,
you're like
well, I'm
lost.
sure there's probably something interesting. And I got to like chapter 2 or 3, and there was so much world, just politics
Yeah.
and
Yep.
like personality conflicts, and like I'm being dropped in the middle of a situation, so I didn't finish the book. It was too much to process, and the blurb actually probably made sense in the context of the rest of the trilogy, but
Yeah.
on its own, like,
Like what is going on?
so that actually creates really interesting questions, right? For
Yeah.
people who are authors, which is the kind of thing we're talking about or
Yeah.
trying to figure out, like with legend fiction, like how do you bring in characters? How do you set up situations? How do you define a world and a
Yep.
character in that world? Um, like with Tolkien, like he starts with a world that's sort of similar to our own with
Mhm.
Hobbiton and hobbits. He doesn't really get into like everything else. Like we go and we show Battle of Unnumbered Tears and stuff
Yes.
because, well, with visuals you can get to a lot
I
more.
think that helps, starting with a common ground because it starts with just one, a hobbit. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, that's okay. We'll learn, but everything else so far is very normal. Breakfast, pipes, tea. It's like well, I can relate to all
Yeah.
these things,
Hmm.
and then it goes into the
Hmm.
once you're already gripped, he
Yep.
then makes the world very deep. I think that's a very good point because I was thinking about
Hmm.
even for the novel I'm writing, which
Hmm.
I love making names that mean something, and
Hmm.
creating new scenarios and worlds that are not like ours, but I do have that challenge when I'm reading books like that. With that first
Hmm.
2 chapters, you're like, it could be a real turnoff, and
Hmm.
I don't want that. So I did make it more. I used his name, which is, just Theon. It's not like it's crazy,
Hmm.
um, but then it's just all normal. And then once you get into it, there's some places and names that make sense. But
Hmm.
yeah, that's very interesting because it is such a large.
I think it's very. I have. eh, What is it? What is that line? It's like you put three people in a room, get five opinions or something. Um, and especially like with authors, like there's an infinity of ways to sort of do this. I have
Yeah,
found it easier to be able to track with um, either something that's like super simple and compelling. Um, like if I remember right, the first chapter of Game of Thrones, what is it? Song of Ice and Fire? I don't remember. But the first chapter, it just has a trio or a little band of warriors going out past the wall, I think, or something, some small group of people, and they're beset by some of these early ice zombie figures. And so it's a very constrained, simple concept, and it stays kind of close to what I could sort of understand, and then it branches out and like it introduces something weird that sets up the flow of the
yeah,
rest of the story. Or anyhow, yeah, it's like it, it depends
it-
on who the author is, I think, and it
yeah.
depends on the promises of the blurb,
True.
promises of the book cover, like what do the pictures look like? If
Hmm.
I have a sense of where it's going, can I like muscle through the first?
Do you know what?
Um,
For me, it is, and this is not, and I don't consider it an expert opinion, but it's an opinion nonetheless. I was reading The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. I don't know the
okay.
author. I just picked it out as in the fantasy section. I said, looks
Hmm.
good. The back
Yeah.
cover, bunch of thieves. Love it. Great. Let's do it. All the elements of the book are fantastic.
Hmm.
The plot line, the whole the setting, the scenario, the characters' interactions,
Hmm.
and but I don't know why. I read it for a while and I put it down and I lost interest. But it's so weird because all the elements are there.
Hmm.
Now put that there, and then I read Dune for the first time before the movie and everything started coming out. I read this a while ago.
It's a thick book, isn't
A
it?
thick book.
Okay.
And even more so, that's a book that's deep with a lot of new names, words,
Hmm.
and places and titles, and I was sucked into it. Knew nothing about the
Really?
author, and no one
Why?
had even. I don't know. That's the thing I'm trying to think of. It's one is they're both very similar in terms of fantasy,
Mm-hmm.
different place. This is like a space opera, so maybe that was more it scratched a niche for me. I don't know. But I don't know what it was. I think my guess is, and I would have to revisit Dune, so this opinion might be on false,
Hmm.
premise. But Dune focused on two characters in the beginning.
Hmm.
There's a lot of phrases and words and different terminology, but it was two people.
Hmm.
The Lies of Lockamora, you're instantly into like 10 different characters. And it was
Oh wow.
hard for me. And I tried to put like an actor to the person I'm reading. Like if, I cast the characters so I could see them in my mind.
Hmm.
I just could not nail down these people. And a lot of the people also were like disfigured and dysmorphed. So it's like hard to put a person to like like a skeleton man, you know?
Okay.
I think
Hmm.
that so it was troublesome for me to visualize what was going on. I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest thing. If I can't visualize it, it's hard for me to get the gears going.
I hear that. There's a novel I read which I didn't expect to like. It's one of those it showed up for free on Kindle like I don't know 3 4 years ago called The Crippled King by A. Trey McRaken or McMaken. I'll put a link in the description. And and it starts with this dwarf who is trying to find his own claim, trying to go out into the wilderness and find his own mine so that well he can build his own future, his own family, and so on. And so right from the get go, it's the author is going to be inducting us into this massive world. And this was a novel that I burned through and absolutely loved. And then I bought the sequel, and then I bought the sequel after that. And then
Hmm.
there's another one which he's written, and I haven't bought that yet. But it's a phenomenal, phenomenal book. The character is it's one of those. Well, I didn't want to give it away, but spoilers, skip ahead, friends. But he starts out being kind of like how you or I would sort of feel about this sort of thing, stealing or trying to, you know, build your own survival at the cost of anything else. But then things start showing up that start demanding a little bit of sacrifice from him, and he wrestles with that, gripes against it, and then very slowly becomes an Aragorn, a full-on Aragorn type figure. I don't know
Mm.
if the author is himself sort of Christian, but there are very strong servant king undertones to the novel, and by the end, it's like I absolutely. Absolutely loved. That's one of my
Yeah.
favorite. But I don't know if I'll read it again.
See,
Some for me, I don't need to like reread things over and over
no.
again. What I got from that was like who that character is who I want to be. And the story itself, the guy, he wrote it because he was like, I love Lord of the Rings, but I never hear about the whole world of the dwarves and how they got up to
Yeah.
anything and everything that they got up
Such a
to.
big world. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny
And
how
so
these,
he went into
yeah.
that.
It's so funny how these things that I found the books that I shouldn't like or I don't or not even shouldn't like. It's just the books that I don't pay attention to sometimes are the biggest hits. So
Hmm.
here's a good, little parallel example. The book Watership Down by Richard Adams, the one about the
Yep.
rabbits, right?
Hmm.
It's been on my shelf for years. And I'm like, well, because I bought it, I don't know, at a book sale out of high school and I just
Hmm.
had it. I was like, it's a classic. So never thought to read it. And always had it up. And it's one of those books I was like random, like, you know what? Let me just look through these books. I'm gonna pick it up. Let's just see what this is
Hmm.
about. It is one of my all-time favorite books.
Really?
And it
Wow.
is, but it's so fast because like you look at the cover, like, why should I like this book about, rabbits
Hmm.
versus this book about I'm trying to think, oh, and versus Game of Thrones.
Hmm.
I had a leather bound it was on sale at Barnes and Noble, so I bought a leather bound, 5 book set of Game of Thrones, a book series that I
Wow.
should love, fits all the I started reading it.
Yeah.
It didn't get me.
Okay.
And it was because it was a lot of whatever. It's just so that little example of like the thing I
Hmm.
shouldn't like. I say
Hmm.
shouldn't because it's like doesn't fit all the other things. Loved.
Hmm.
So I don't know what to I extrapolate from that, but it's just that I wish I want to do that more with books that like this book. That's why I picked up this book at Barnes and Nobles. Is like
Hmm.
it looks like a good book. It doesn't even look like a book I should read, but it looks interesting, so let's do it. Versus like, Watership Down. It looked
Hmm.
interesting, but I never picked it up because I'm like, I'm not gonna get into that. That's
Yeah.
weird.
That's funny. I've not yet, I don't think I've yet watched Watership Down all the way through or read it. And I've had people say the same thing. It's like brilliant. It's
It's
amazing.
it's one of those things. I watched the Netflix one.
Yeah, I
It
got
didn't
halfway through that and
it
it just,
didn't hit the same as the novel because I don't know
yeah.
why. Seeing somebody depict rabbits running around, it just loses the flavor versus in your mind. I don't know why.
Yeah, it's because we sort of make them more human
Yeah. Versus you
in,
get like
in our
the
in that
book gives you like
experience.
that the book gives you like an it's almost like you get this inside view of this unknown world
Hmm.
of rabbits and how they would communicate. How would they, what would a feud of rabbits look like in the and
Yeah.
it really pulls on camaraderie, leadership, you know, owning up to what you're called to do. So all those great themes,
Hmm.
you know, with rabbits.
Yeah. And that's so interesting. There's the closest that I've got to something like this was trying to remember. There's one about moles, Dunmore or something, which I can't
Oh.
even remember. But then as a kid, I read a book called A Rustle in the Grass. And I think it did similar sort of thing, but with ants. And it
Mm.
had two competing tribes of ants. There's the red ants, and I think they were black ants. And there's one ant who is being like broken into by visions, um, being called to create something or inaugurate something different or new or create a new thing. And at the same time, still trying to survive and keep his colony up. I think I reread it a couple of years ago to see like, wow, is it really as good as I thought it was? And it was like okay. Um, it it pulled its punches. I thought on well because we're coming from like a very spiritual Christian
Yeah.
non-materialist mindset.
Mm.
A lot of times when people go to create these stories, they don't. know what to do. These writing or these elements are like so powerful, like visions and spirits and calling and meaning in life, and it's all like really powerful stuff for stories. But in like real life, well, we know it's actually just kind
Yeah.
of a pipe dream,
Yeah.
something. Um, and I'm annoyed when a story feels like it's pulling its punches.
Yeah.
Now, or in other times, it's deliberately making a point that this person could be deluded or they could be tripping or making it up. But it doesn't matter because to invert Dumbledore's quote from the end of Harry Potter, right? It's like, is this all in my head? It's like,
Yeah.
well, why should that make it any less real?
Yeah.
And there's two ways you can take that. One being like your sort of existential phenomena that you experience is real for you, but doesn't have to be real for anybody else. Or the fact that you are back-ended into a much, much bigger universe. You participate in a much, much bigger reality, and some parts of it only your mind has access to. And that's a
Mm.
shared space you can share with others. And that's the whole thing. There's like a movie or a series, I think we might have talked about this, but it was called, I think it's called Black Hole. And it's set in
No.
Europe. And it's in the border between France and Belgium, I think. Or it's called Dead Zone, maybe. The French is Black Hole, I think. And it's a space where there's no, what is it? No cell signal at all. So it's a dead zone for cell signals. And in that area, it seems like the ancient god Hern or Cernunnos has come back and he's terrorizing this village because they're strip mining the forests and so on. And so he's coming back and he's attacking this village, and it's a horror murder mystery and stuff. And it was like 2 seasons. And I was really digging it until, spoiler alert for those, skip the next 5 minutes. But they turned around, they pulled their punches, and they decided not to make it like a spiritually based thing. Now, I don't know if they'll come back with season 3 ever, but they ended with this thing that it was kind of a lost kid who got a bacterial infection and he sprouted horns and
Wow.
became a mythical kind of thing.
Well, that's interesting.
But it's actually very scientifically, or materialistically
Yeah.
explained. And I'm like, well, that's
Come on.
boring. This is not what this whole thing was setting up,
Yeah.
So along these same lines, I watched a movie over the weekend called Men Who Stare at Goats.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And I think I'd heard that referenced on some clip from a Rogan podcast, and
Probably,
they were
yeah.
talking about MK Ultra, and I thought, I've never seen that movie. I'll go check it out just so that I can say I've seen
Yeah.
it, or so that I know what's in it. And it was very funny. It felt like when it came out, it probably landed and had a lot of smiles because Obi-Wan Kenobi is the main character, and it's
Mm.
all about I'm sure it just come out of Phantom
Yeah,
Menace, and they're like, we gotta
probably,
get
right?
this guy to play somebody who's exploring how real life Jedi were trained by the
Mm.
American government to
That's
do
true.
remote
I didn't think about
viewing,
that.
stuff like that. And they all call themselves Jedi, and you're the next Jedi and stuff. It's like they're deliberately like having an inside joke about Star Wars because he's that guy. But what's funny / annoying is, again, the same way. I don't know anything about that whole situation beyond watching that movie, and I only have a nominal sense of what the government has been up to with
Mm.
training and psychic viewing and stuff. And I think a lot of that stuff has been now recently declassified, and the documents are all online, and I've seen all the reels of people talking it through, and it's mildly concerning stuff. Like, you shouldn't be playing around with this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Anyhow. But it also felt like with this story, they're pulling their punches a lot. Like, they delved into, people could be making it up. They could be crazy. They could be tripping, or it could be real. And the very last scene
Yeah.
has the main character finally running through a wall and phasing through a wall as a final flipping of the bird to the audience. Like, you think we're kidding? It's like, mm-mm. But at the
Breaking
same
the fourth
time,
wall?
well, yeah, they
Yeah.
broke the final wall.
Literally,
And he runs
yeah.
into the credits. And I don't know. I'm not sure what to make. It's like, okay, it's a great transitional movie for those who are like completely materialist, and your mind
Yeah.
is like locked up inside you and isolated from actually being able to impact anything. And then you get a movie like this where all of the main characters are convinced, oh yes, we can do a lot more than,
Well,
you know.
that opens up. I like this conversation. I think there was a podcast a while, like I think from Radio Lab, back a few years ago, talking about the senses. And so we have our 5, like, what are they called? Tactile senses, whatever. So, sight, smell,
Mhm.
taste, touch. But then we have other senses, your sense of time, sense of direction, sense of, so there's different senses. And they were
Mhm.
exploring the topic of, psychic readings, but then also just perception
Mhm.
that's, different than what we typically have.
Mhm.
And they did this study with somebody, they would have an object behind a wall, and these people that have high inclinations to knowing what that object might be. And they were saying that essentially they showed all these different tests from the 70s, 80s, 90s. They did, they had somebody in America thinking of, giving numbers that were plugged in Russia. And
Mhm.
there was every time they got to the point where the highest, skilled person had
Mhm.
a above 50% chance of knowing what the thing is. So more than average. Now the thing they were exploring though was that are these things senses that we have that are not matured or
Mhm.
explored or developed? It's like saying someone's sense of time from the dark ages who lived in a cave. Well, their sense of time is so, you know, minuscule compared to somebody who would be in the daylight or have have watches to kind of correspond against. Um, so I'm so interested in that,
Mhm.
thinking that there might be senses that we have or
Mhm.
abilities that are just unexplored,
Yeah.
underdeveloped, underutilized. Because if that's another thing. If I walk around and have don't have anything to touch, well, my sense of touch is going to be all off.
Mhm. Mhm.
So if I have no use to perceive
Yeah.
anything, I don't know. It's where it's and it still stays in the boundaries of a Christian worldview because it's not going against anything. It's a sense that
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
may
Yeah.
have, may or may not
Mhm.
have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now where that goes, that can
What
be
you do with that, it's like the same thing as what you do with
exactly,
your own hand and your own, your own senses.
exactly.
What are you going to look at?
Yep,
It's a matter of discipline. A lot of it.
yep.
No, I think it's frankly lazy thinking to just label everything as a cult and write it off.
Yeah, because like, come on, I mean, that's I
Yeah.
don't like the yeah. There's no area of opportunity to discuss. The thing is, there's these things are so understudied because no one's gonna fund that
Mm.
because there's no application of use.
Mhm.
The government had those because they
Mhm.
said, well, let's see if we can, but they're so weak that it's like we can't put any more. Even if it is true, let's say we can
Mhm.
have somebody who has a perception of telepathy but it's so weak that the government can't use it
Mhm.
that they wouldn't, and they tried training.
Well, I think that they've had some pretty extraordinary success with it, and I cannot remember what the research I was reading, but they were doing it for a lot, and it is very likely they're continuing to do it because the Russians were training telepathic spies, and
Yep,
so we got into that too. And the fact that it can work like at all is what is so intriguing to me.
that
Like
is true. Yeah,
I'm annoyed that the government is, trying to corral and use it and develop it as a skill independent of someone's moral status, which is
yeah,
the major consideration here. It's like someone training to be a warrior, going to like martial arts classes without having any corresponding like philosophy or morality trained in at the same time. What
yeah,
do you end up with is a highly skilled, kind of a mercenarial or somebody who's able to kill with no guardrails on, you
yeah.
know, how they use it. Um, can humans do this sort of thing? We do it with everything. So trying to remember like what you were saying, or some thoughts are going through my head. One was uh, it can be, I think, a skill that we can be cultivated and developed. And once you get outside of the materialist paradigm, right? You travel around the world, you'll find other people, what is it, like gurus and teachers, and you'll have specific, practitioners and shamans who'll be able to do this sort of thing. Like, oh yeah, this is just normal. There's a phenomenal book that just it's one of those books that's like changed my life. It's called the uh, oh come on book. Oh my goodness, Egyptian Book of the Dead was its inspiration. So it's called the Dreamers. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna have to. The Robert Moss was the author. The Dreamers Book of the
Oh
Dead, I think
wow.
it was called. Anyhow, um, he had one little throwaway point about the Polynesians and how they would cross the oceans, and like they were phenomenal at how they were able to navigate astronomical distances across the Pacific and stuff. And he has this one little line where it's like, yeah, from their histories, what they would do is have someone just dream ahead where they needed to go and scout ahead in their dreams,
Wild.
and then come back and say, okay, here's where we need to go. Three clicks that way,
Yeah.
and there's land that we need to get
And
to.
how accurate was it?
They're all alive and
Accurate
still
enough? Yeah.
telling the stories. So they did it.
There you go. Yeah, that's
So
true.
here's what's so
Wow.
intriguing. This I just saw it was a tweet. I didn't keep reading because at the time it didn't interest me. It always does after I've had time to think about it, and by then it's gone. And I haven't gone back to relook it up. But some scientist got a Nobel Prize for, or different people have had Nobel Prizes. They've proved effectively at the scientific level that, gosh, how do you say this? Observation creates locality, I think is the way to say it.
Okay.
The universe on its own, especially at like the quantum level, is a non-local universe. So perception creates locality. Now, if you assume our universe is only filled with just humans, then you start to go crazy. Because like if I'm not looking somewhere, there's nothing there. Technically, that's kind of true, and that'll mess your head up. But
Yeah.
if you assume that there are loads of other consciousnesses,
Yeah.
and what we would call them angels or angelic beings or gods and so on, their acts of observation is what also kind of locks everything down into place.
That's interesting.
Okay, and that's how we get the universe as it
This
is. Go ahead.
Yeah, this I'd say this goes along the lines of like if a tree falls in the forest, no one's there to hear it, doesn't make a sound. Well, then it's almost in that, that's a joke, but
Yeah, well, if you have to clarify, I think the question, right? Does it make does it, if a sound is defined as something that the human ear picks up?
so then
Otherwise, it's
it's
merely
not
just vibration
waves, yeah.
in air. Somebody had a good response to that. I don't remember what it was, but
Anyway, sorry.
anyway, so if you're dealing with things like consciousness and non-locality as sort of the fundament of how the universe, how creation, how cosmos is put together,
Yeah.
then, well, the idea of being able to be telepathic or to remote view is actually not very surprising because consciousness is non-local.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is a weird conversation where this goes. I'm still trying to make sense of it. The human experience of consciousness does nerf and filter and limit your consciousness down through
Sure.
your immediate senses. But you can step out of that. And we do have mystics. We do have shamans who do that. We do have practitioners. You take drugs and you can alter your chemistry, and that
Open the
realigns you
bandwidth.
to see different things. There you go. Changes your bandwidth of what you perceive, changes what your
Well, it makes
consciousness connects
sense.
to.
Yeah, it makes sense
Yeah.
that we don't have that to start off with. Because if you imagine if that,
Well,
this
here's
open
where I'm actually going to
faucet.
go. I'm going to go the other way,
Okay.
which is so
Go
Rudolf
ahead.
Steiner. He makes a point that we went from being we are a conscious being because we begin as an angelic sort of thing, and then over time, we're participating with the rest of the angels in creation to form the human body, and then at the point when the human body is able to receive the human soul is when we wake up and then we merge. So consciousness does not emerge out of matter. Consciousness pre-exists and forms matter until it gets to a point where it can especially as in the state of a person, can bond with and mediate and communicate through it. It's kind of like it's like if you're building a video game, you have a dream of where it's going to be, and you keep clarifying and figuring out your character until it is the most adaptable and responsive to the environment that it needs to play in, and then you go and you play that game, and that's what how a human is. But even then, we are still, this is what Steiner calls spiritual evolution. We are still in a process of evolving our, what we are as human beings. So 10,000 years ago, even 6,000 years ago, we used to be slightly different in terms of how we lived as humans, right? We one of the Inklings named Owen Barfield wrote a whole book on this topic called Original Participation, which is something that we have lost, which is where we used to be a whole lot more clairvoyant, a whole lot more telepathic, a whole lot more perceptive of what was, let's call them the angels and conscious beings and so on around us that we now cannot see anymore. Why can we say this? Well, it's because you look back at all the old stories and one, people functioned and thought a bit more like animals do, in the sense of, I am a group. I don't have an identity apart from a group, same way that animals do. I can see things and I'm perfectly comfortable seeing everything all around me. And none of these things are concerning to me. And I'm not like bothered trying to label them or define them. This is just what reality is. But
Yeah.
over time, part of our spiritual evolution is that we as individual persons, a person like a child goes from being a child to a teen to an adult. And there is not a colding, but there is a individuating process, because a person is something that is fully themselves and is free to make choices, is free to enter into relationship with others, right? If you are not free to enter into relationship, it's not a real relationship.
Yeah.
So like a child has very limited sense of self. And you can see a child, it's like a dial very slowly turning as they slowly come into focus. It's like the personality of the child, the freedom, the individuation of the child. That soul is very slowly, it's like coming into focus over time and through experience until like something sort of, clicks or becomes very, very clear. Now you are a free person. And now this is why at that point the church is like, the Catholic Church especially, now let's start giving them sacraments to start helping them through
Yeah.
that. So by the time they actually like click in, and because a free person is able to make good and bad decisions. If you're not free, if you're still like a child, something, it's not really, if you're not fully free, you're not fully culpable.
Mm.
Anyway, where am I going
So
with all of this?
go
It's
ahead. Yeah.
just to finish up and
Yep.
back over to you. It's that we used to have these powers
Yeah.
because we were more immersed in it all. Now we have lost it, specifically with the incarnation of Christ. He's the ultimate
Okay. I was gonna
individuating
ask that.
principle. Let's, if you were to imagine like a nuclear bomb sort of dropped into, or this flowering of the seed of human potential, and by he's as the ultimate person, right, being God, entering into the human stream, entering into the entire human organism and thing made up of every single human across all space and time. Now, all of a sudden, you see this sort of collapse into ourselves, where we separate ourselves from the group, from family, from other, from everybody, until we start to get to a point where you feel like you're Descartes. I am like locked inside my own meat machine and I have no contact with anybody. It's we've gone all the way to the other side of like original participation to like total loss, or whatever the word is. And now we have, as grown-ups, what does a grown-up do is you choose a wife, you choose a family, choose a community. Not you're forced into it, you're habituated to it, you freely enter into it. And now we start to go back the other way. So his idea is that we will regain these lost gifts, but we will now know how to wield them and use them intentionally, and not just like habitually.
Gotcha.
So there's a
Wow.
bunch.
So there's three things that came to mind.
Mhm.
One, that was what I was going to ask. The point with which we lost these abilities, and you answered that with with Christ coming down, which is interesting.
Well, we were phasing into that with him.
Yeah.
And then it like really started taking off.
Gotcha.
Notice how that's when all of the myths and the storytelling and the relationship to the world,
Everything
the gods
changed.
all seemed to die, the fairies all seemed
Yeah.
to die, everything seemed to die. It's like blinkers came on, because it's like a child, like a teenager, when they start to define themselves and they just rebel and live in their room. It's like, where's my happy little child? It's like, it's not the same thing happening anymore. Like,
Well,
they're
that's interesting
finding
though.
themselves.
So obviously, as Christians, we believe that the greatest good is Christ coming down to earth. But in this scenario, and hopefully I'm not being too parallel or contrary, is this a good thing then that our blinders came up and we're centrally focused? Was that the whole point, that we had this awareness and that said, yeah, you've, as children of on the earth, you've had this awareness, and look what you did with it. You scattered your fantasies and your delights everywhere, but now we're kind of narrowing your focus.
I don't think it was punitive or
Okay.
anything like that.
That's what
It's
I'm
just like a child. And there are some children, I think, who still have. Okay, let's also bring a point of clarity. It's not also accurate or true to say that every human was like this. Did you ever
but just
watch?
in general, yeah.
It was those who were more mindful or attentive, especially if you're like a bard or a priest, and that's why they would end up probably going to the priesthood, or those who did become wise women or weird men or something. Did you ever watch that movie? What's it called? Based on the book Eaters of the Dead, 13th Warrior. Did you ever watch that? We talked about that a year ago.
Yeah, no, I still have not watched
Okay.
it.
There's this one little scene where these characters, these Vikings, the town is being beset by hordes of bear warriors, and they finally decide to take the battle to them, and so they enter into their camp at night or something, and they find these armies of sort of orc-like humans mindlessly just huddled together, sitting together, staring at fires, doing nothing. It's that kind of pre-human state that we probably used to live in, and that we can degenerate back into if we're not attentive and disciplined. And that's why we have stuff like human culture, like where we rely on each other and we train things into each other to sort of help us get a better chance at life, because there are these powerful and noble things that are active inside us. We're talking about a stage that is slightly after that, where as you start to wake up and be more aware, your angels and your attending spirits, and they, you can see this actually like in the Iliad. It's a really good example where these characters, you can see that they don't have a clear sense of my self. Like they say stuff like my heart quails within me and my feet carry me across the battlefield. And we would never say that today. We would be like, I ran across the
Yeah.
battlefield.
Yep.
But that sense of like, they had like, I am a composite of a variety of things that are making up me. And so if you go back and read mythology, you'll see that that was the norm, and you can miss that if you're not seeing that that's what they were doing. Barfield had this concept, and he says it's called I think, what's the word? It's like archaeological linguistics, or where when you look at the way things are described or the words that are used, it can be another form of archaeology. So when you read the early books of sacred scripture, you're going to see more of this kind of thing, less of this sense of an individual, more the sense of I am bound to my gods, and where my gods go, there go I, and where goes the tribe. So the idea of someone like Moses, separating himself from the Egyptian peoples and heading them back out. For a lot of the Hebrews, they're like, we don't have a choice. This is our deity. He is, our body is a corporate body of what it means to be a Hebrew is bound up with this God being. And the Egyptians are like, we're not following that. We are born into the service of this God, mediated to us through this Pharaoh. We don't have a choice in the matter. The idea of conversion in general is not an ancient idea. It just, you didn't do it. You lived and died in the service of how you were born and the cards you were given. But as you become more free, and you'll start to see this with specific figures who are like leading the charge of this evolution, like stuff is like, they're beginning to pay more attention to their inner lives, they're collaborating more with their angels and so on. And then they start to individuate, and they start to be able to make decisions that the rest of the world goes, you are insane. And then history bears them out that they were right. They're the ones kind of leading that charge. Wow, we really went off into the deep end with this stuff.
No, well, this is,
it's really, it's fascinating stuff.
yeah, this goes back to what I was thinking about earlier. Powers, and I was thinking about this, our natural powers. Each of us have these natural, like, abilities and skills. And one thing, and I hope this doesn't embarrass you too much, I'm enamored with your ability to have such a profound depth of opinion. That's why I love listening. It's so good. It's not rambling. It's coherent. So it's one thing that I've
really
always,
happy about that.
no, I've always strived. I was like, I would, it's something I'm trying to work on, is developing depth of opinion. I have opinions, but it's like, listening to they can go so deep, and they string together, and they're coherent. And I was thinking, which I think they're just different. And I don't think anything bad or, anything better. It's just, they're different. And I was thinking, if I was to compare us to two legends, I feel like you're more of like the Tolkien and I'm more of the Lewis. And what I mean by that is Tolkien has deep, rich world building that goes all together and all strings, and there's facets of human life, and Lewis has everything. Yeah, exactly. And Lewis has these great tales as well, but they're here, and they attach to things, and they're parallel to these concepts, but they don't have roots that grow deep. Again, both incredible legends of writing, to compare us to legends of writing. But it's just so interesting. I want to know more. I'm learning more about, like, what are my powers? Like, don't compare yourself to Tolkien if you're Lewis. Don't compare yourself to Lewis if you're Tolkien.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about us, and I was thinking, like, natural abilities, but also like, what would, and I'm going to this because I went to a coffee shop and there's a great idea. The tip jar, you put your tip in whatever superpower you'd most want to have. And I was like, what a great idea. Because, it's so fun. Why can't the world be more fun like that? So the two abilities were telepathy and invisibility. So out of those options, I chose invisibility.
Okay.
But out of
Say
all
why.
the options, though, what would you like? What would you want to be your
Oh,
superpower?
superpower?
Yeah,
Oh
let's
my
open up
goodness.
the doors to, because I have child Gabe wanted a certain superpower, and now adult Gabe has a different desire for a
So
superpower.
why out of those two, why'd you pick invisibility? And then what would your dream power be?
Well, this invisibility tapped into child Gabe. I've always
Okay.
wanted invisibility, mostly for like the nefarious reasons. I wanted to like prank people. I wanted to like
Of
just scoop
course.
and spy
Yeah. Yeah.
and just be where I probably shouldn't be. Um, and that's where I kind of more so now. I kind of I don't know how this sounds, but I kind of just don't want attention on me,
Hmm.
and I just want to be not like. And I don't, we don't have to go into too deep in like a therapeutic sense, but I just want to be invisible. I just want to do my thing. I want to go and be and witness the animals and not be and not them run away from me. I was thinking about that the other day, going through
Mhm.
the woods and a bald eagle flew away. I said I just want to be invisible so I can just watch.
Mhm.
And more I just want to, and
Mhm.
not in a creepy sense now. I just
Yeah.
want to
Yeah. Yeah.
watch and
Yeah.
be so out of those two senses. And I said,
Mhm.
you know what? I don't even know what I'm thinking half time. I don't need to know what other people are thinking. Like I think
Mhm.
I don't need that. That's why I chose those 2. So I don't know. Out of those 2, what would you choose? And then what would be your
That's so interesting. Hmm. There, as a sidebar, there was a funny moment in the movie last night that I watched, Men Who Stare at Goats,
yeah.
where they talked about this. Like, yeah, I'm a level 2 or level 3 in invisibility. And then the Obi-Wan character, Hugh McGregor, goes, "Wait, you're what now? You can actually turn invisible?" And it's like, yeah, we train for this. What you mean, like you become like, you know, camouflage? And it's like, no, it's not like camouflage. It's like um you stop things from being able to perceive you. It's
Mm,
functionally the same concept. If nobody can see you, you're invisible.
you're
In the
invisible.
sense of like, if nobody can put their attention on you,
Yeah.
it's not like you become glass, like you're wearing a
Yeah,
cloak of invisibility.
exactly.
It's like if nobody can see you, you're the same, or if nothing is able to perceive you because I don't know, you give out a charge or you give
Yeah,
out an
you blend
impression.
in, yeah.
There's nothing here to see. Um, it's the same thing. It's just funny. So I think flight and flying
Yeah.
is, I don't know if it would be forever. Like routinely in dreams, the thing that I love most that fills me with like this wild joy is being
Mhm.
able to fly. And it's almost impossible for me to sustain. It always ends up like, whoops, what is it called when you're like trying to
Swimming?
dog
Oh,
paddle like
yeah.
2 inches above the ground and just want to
Yep.
get up and there's that sense of freedom, and there's a reason why you dream that. I think flight in dreams is an indication of interior freedom,
Yeah.
and your state, or how you think about that. Um, I don't know of any other powers. You know what's kind of funny that you mentioned this? Over the weekend, I was hit by. When did you go to the coffee shop? By the way,
Saturday.
what is today? Monday. This is hilarious. Saturday, I had an idea of creating a superhero saints series.
See, there we go. The
This is
connection.
it is uncanny. Yeah. The idea was to create Marvel Cinematic Universe, but using saints.
Yeah.
And so I tried to find a list of like the weirdest and wildest saints,
The
and
flying stain, yeah.
yeah, like flying saints, and then go to Mid Journey, generate them as actual superhero art.
That'd be cool.
Look, dude, I came up with this absolutely awesome time traveling, um, epic story, and I'm probably throwing Saint Therese of Lisieux, Scholar Acutus, Moses the Black, Saint Christopher, Melchizedek. I need somebody. I think Melchizedek will probably be my Nick Fury, um,
That makes sense,
and
yeah.
just reimagine all of the saints and their stuff as superheroes, and then introduce like a slightly alternate dimension filled with whatever,
Yeah.
trying to defend the birth in
I'm
Bethlehem.
telling you,
It's kind of the
this is
thing.
what we need to do, because this morning on ChatGPT, I was just, like,
Yeah.
playing around. The
Yeah.
big thing I was humming around I'm looking at right now, Catholic saints as superheroes.
You are kidding.
So, like, this is now too many levels.
This
It's
is
gotta happen.
ridiculous. Wow.
Yeah. I actually have and I've got a bunch of questions out of, anyways, that's another thing. I have a
Get into it.
50.
This is fun. Let's just pull
Well,
on
yeah,
this thread for the last 15 minutes here.
sure. Yeah, so there's so many things I have. I was playing with ideas for the show to talk about, and one of
Okay.
the things was Catholic saints as superheroes, which is
Mhm.
amazing. And then I have it give me 50 questions to talk about in terms of like pop culture. So that's a whole list of things. But to choose, and we go into this one, what saint would you choose? What would their power be, and where would they be in the place of the story? So it's like you get just to kind of dive down. So if who was the pope that flew? I think there's a
Pope.
couple. Yeah. Oh no, sorry, not the Pope. The Saint. The
Oh,
fly. The
well,
levitating saint.
now I've
Was it
learned of a
Pope
couple.
Pio?
So
All right, not Pope. Jeez.
I don't know
Saint
about Padre
Saint Padre
Pio, but
Pio.
there's Joseph of Cupertino.
That's the one I'm thinking of. Yes.
Yep, they had to tie a string around his ankle to stop him from floating away as they went on processions.
Yeah.
There's also Saint Christina the Astonishing, who has a weird story. Came back from the dead and couldn't stop flying to the tops of trees to get away from. She could just smell
Yeah.
when other people were in inappropriate states or states of sin, and so she could smell that and just had to like get away, and so she'd be flying all over the place to get away from it. Um, Weird, fascinating story. Who else flew? I can't think.
There's a. I
Those
thought.
are two anyway.
Yeah. You can make instead of like the X-Men, it'd be like the Cairo
I'm totally
men and
ripping
women.
off
Yeah.
X-Men. When I was in Christendom, we were studying Theology 101, and I was riveted by this idea called charismata, which is that the charismata are, what do you call it? Charismatic gifts that we are given.
Yeah.
So speaking in tongues, the
Yeah.
ability to, well, maybe there's like telepathy in there. There's a lot of these things that are psychic gifts and so on. Things that are granted out of the ordinary without the discipline required to sort of
Mm.
level up to it. That's when it becomes perhaps something
Yeah.
like a gift. And I thought, well, what if we could bring back like the judges and make like an X-Men,
Oh,
you
that'd be
know,
so cool.
super strength and
Yeah.
speed and,
You get
like
like
this.
instead of Hawkeye, you have David with his slingshot. It's like this wicked aim. That'd be so cool.
Yeah, exactly. Or there's one monk or one, I can't remember, one author of one of the inspired books, or his one inspired author where an angel would carry him by his hair, and then he would like fly just anywhere, and there's an angel sort of grabbing his man bun, and away they
Yeah.
fly like anywhere. So if nobody sees the angel, so you just see him like going like
Yeah.
flying off.
It's superpowers roll around. I'm picturing. You ever see the movie A Bug's Life, from, like the '90s, the
Yeah.
Disney Pixar one, when
Once or twice.
the caterpillar becomes a butterfly. He's like this really fat caterpillar,
gosh.
and his
Yeah,
wings
yeah.
are this big, so they have to hoist him around.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Heimlich.
there's
That's his name.
Heimlich. There's not only telepathy, there's also bilocation is something saints did.
Bilocation, which could be
Padre Pio
either
bilocated a ton.
which could either be teleporting or like super speed. You can kind of imagine him as like he's so fast that he bilocate.
Yep,
Whatever
yep.
one. That'd be
Man.
cool. Yeah,
So
there's
keep going.
there's
Where was your story? What were you working through?
So I was thinking of the flying. That's when I first got. I was thinking of the flying saint, which is I thought was Padre Pio, which I think he did levitate, but Joseph Cupertino is the one I was really thinking of, and just having a whole storyline around that. Like he finally that's his power that he discovers. But I would love some mashup of saints. That's outside, so that somehow they all get into one location outside of time. Don't know how you do it. I don't know how you work that into the mix. But I also like the idea of, oh gosh, and see, this is this is my pulling from my original podcast idea, just trying to be Catholic.
Yeah.
I'm just so help me with the storyline. Who was it? Was it when Jesus appeared and they saw Elijah and
Moses
Moses
on Tabor.
That's okay. So how cool that concept too? Like obviously bringing back this elite cast in some shape and form. I don't know. So that kind of storyline, I don't know what you do with it, and how do you play with these storylines without being heretical? I don't know. But that would be really cool. Like these elite, legends that are still ready to go to battle, that are fighting for us. I've always thought that was cool.
Agreed.
I actually wrote a blog once. We were forming an idea for a Catholic camp and how we could stir among like an excitement to be Catholic. That's what the whole theme was, excited to be Catholic in teens and young adults. And one of the things we said is like, how cool would it be that if you truly understood the gravity and the awesomeness of saints that are in the heavens ready for and cheering you on, that are there like ready to go to battle for you. I don't know. So I was trying to make this illustration, and I wrote it in a blog of like, you're walking along and, just this visualization of in the heavens are these saints watching over you, and almost like getting ready to like tap me in. I'm ready to go. Like Saint Michael's like there, like let me in,
tap me in.
like so I would love to have to fully think of a storyline like that, like a really rich novel where a character goes along and has all these different help from the saints, like in different ways. That's not cheesy. That's not corny. That's epic. And that these And it's real too. And it's
Yeah.
all, when you finish the book, it's like, yeah, it's fiction because I wrote it up, but it's like, this is like, you know, plausible fiction. Like this is,
Yeah.
possible.
There's a I can't remember the name of the series. I started watching it. I love these shows where it's like the character, like for example, dies in a car accident and they turn around and then they look down and there's sort of their body in the car and they're like, huh, now what? And then there's
Yeah.
somebody leaning over there with like a toothpick going, oh, you made it.
Yeah.
Come
Welcome.
on, we got a job to do. It's like, what? Yeah, we're here to help transition
Yeah.
souls because they get lost and stuff.
Yeah.
We help them stop, move on and stuff.
Yep.
I love those kinds of stories. And I'm thinking that what I might be messing around with is like Carlo Acutis, and he has a maybe he like wakes up or something. I don't know. I'm thinking that he might have the gift of traveling through the internet. So he's functionally
Oh,
like
that's
the
cool.
Flash,
Yeah.
so he can like travel anywhere like super fast, but as
Yeah.
long as there's an internet connection,
And he
just
goes through,
because for now he's specifically tied to that or something. I don't know yet where it goes, but I thought it'd be funny for like him to sort of wake up and maybe he meets Saint Therese of Lisieux and she's like a young girl and she's able to summon a storm of roses or something as part of her attack, right?
Yeah.
And he says something like, "Hey, I thought I was going to get judged. Like I saw a white light. I went towards that.
Yeah.
Where's like the final judgment and everything? Like, what's going on?" She's like, "We got a job to do. Our job is to like, you made it this far. That's great."
Yeah.
And then he's like, "I don't understand." And he's like, I just died, right?" And she's like, "Silly boy, your body died. You're still going. Like you haven't. You're not dead yet. Not for a long time." What?
Yeah.
Come on, we have a job to do. And then pulls her on. That sense of like, this is, it matters a lot to me, is reimagining our mythology and storytelling around the afterlife,
Yeah.
around what it means to be alive, around how we think about the saints. And it's like, if you don't, oh goodness, where do I want to go with this? There's this beautiful tradition over in the East among I think it's the Bodhisattvas, where they achieve transcendence. They achieve an opportunity to enter into, I think it's like nirvana. And the gods or something give them an option. Do you want to continue? And they're like, I don't want to enter into blessedness until everybody does. And so they choose to dive back down into all of the pain and the reality of everything to be lightning rods of grace for others, to just trudge through the grit of every single day to make things better for others in pain, to help them see, help them wake up, help them level up, right? They've like earned the right to move on, and they've decided, nope, all is good and God is in all, and therefore I want to help minister, and be a part of helping, God to be all in all, something like that.
Yeah.
Well, what's so funny, maybe it's not even funny at all. You find the same thing happening with a whole bunch of saints.
Yeah.
Where they're given the same invitation. It's like, you can.
Yep.
And they're like, no, I want to go back and keep being involved. And Saint Therese of Lisieux is exactly that kind of person. She's actually promised, like, I'm going to keep being involved, and I'm going to send a shower of roses, from heaven to keep answering prayers and so on. We have to stop thinking of this idea that heaven is like this sort of ring of distant saints looking down on us, and we're sort of in an arena, and there's like this massive gap between us. Instead, if we were to think of them as like shotgun, your patrons are riding shotgun in your life. They're right next to you. They want to be tapped in. They're watching, they're engaging. There's this beautiful, I love this thought when it comes especially to your spiritual life, this idea that we like to think like, oh, you know what? I need to say a prayer right now, or maybe I need to like calm down and do something a little more intentional and more deep, and maybe invite a saint or invite a patron and ask for their help. Getting to that specific point is not something you initiated. It's something that was initiated in you. It was offered to you, to your attention, your awareness. It's a good idea. Are you going to accept it? And if you do, are you going to do something about it?
Yeah.
Right. I remember loving this in Theology 101, where it's like, God provides the grace, the inspiration to do a good thing, and then the grace to help your will to choose to do the good thing. And then he gives you another confirmation sort of after you did it, like, here's cookies, kiddo, to inspire you to keep, turning your attention, turning the Titanic of our closed mind very slowly back, towards him. So patrons choose us. Your saints that we love, they choose us. We don't like go, you know what, I decide you're my guy, I'm going to love you, or you're my girl. It's like, no, they adopt us long
Mm,
before because they're
yeah.
around long before we are. Um, and we're constantly collaborating, responding to them.
Mm,
So that for me, that's what intrigues me with, I don't know where my story would go, but the
yeah.
idea that there's like a slight dimension shift alongside this one where
Yeah.
they're hard at work, busy at work, and of course they're more like superheroes because everything is more dramatic.
Yeah.
And when stuff goes wrong there, it manifests on this side, which is, I think, probably what happens anyway. It manifests on this side as like when things go wrong, or things start to go right, or things
Yeah.
fall apart, or they hold together. There's a line in the Gospels. It's no, the Epistles. I think it was where Saint Michael or one of the angels is like, I stopped to give you this message because I'm on my way to go help these other angels fight this battle over here in this other area,
That's right.
which is
Yeah.
like that right there just communicates so many little things. One, outside of our awareness are things that are really busy all the time.
Mm,
Um, the battles matter, or the engagements that they are in matter. And we have a role to play in that. And our responses to them, to what these battles are going on, anchor down the good or dissipate what is established and then realize sort of things to flow in and break down again. Um, for me, I've realized I need a much wider and wilder definition of what it means to be alive. If everything in sacred scripture says
yeah.
is true,
Yep.
then
For
I need to
sure.
live in a very different world. One of the ways I mess around with this is either research, but also fiction as a way to
Yeah.
like, have fun with it. So
For sure.
it's a
Well,
lot.
this opens up, if we want to close with this
Yeah. Yeah.
or whatever, the challenge we're doing this week is
Mm,
prayer.
mm,
Be a man who prays or of prayer. It's funny. It's one of the ones as Catholics, as Christians, is so integral into our lives. So it shouldn't be, anything of challenge. And what I mean by that is it should be already part of our lives. But it's so funny how this week I've had such a challenge
mhm,
incorporating it more. Because I've been trying to do it, so I wake up early, I've been waking up early, regardless, and having a just prayer quietly. I'm having such a difficulty in that when I'm sitting being quiet, it's like all the knobs of the of volume are turned up, and I'm thinking of a million things. I can't quiet my mind.
mhm.
I start praying in Our Father. I get to Our Father who art, and oh, what's that? Yeah, and it's just like it goes to the next thing,
I know.
and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so I liked there was a man that we've been doing the challenge with who mentioned going for a walk in prayer, and
Mm,
that has been so much better for me.
mhm,
I get it. I feel like I have an actual conversation
mhm.
because my body's moving too,
Yeah.
and I want to get to. I like the idea of having a time where it's everything's quiet, just rest and peace. But the problem is right now my mind is not at rest when my body is. When I'm
Mhm,
walking, that's when my mind is quiet.
mhm,
So, and I don't know if that's a general thing or just a me thing. So this week, I had a lot of trouble doing the 5 minutes of quiet time in my chair early in the
mhm,
morning. I had a great time, 30 minutes walking through the woods
mhm,
and just talking with
mhm,
God. So that's been, and I don't know if that means I need to just strengthen an area or just play with my, strengths and weaknesses or whatever it is. But this week of prayer has been interesting because I was so focused on just doing the, in a home in my
mhm.
chair.
Yeah.
But I liked, the idea of doing a rosary when you go for a walk with the dog. I think that he put. I don't know. So how's your week
Yeah.
been with prayer? Anything different, change, challenging?
So actually need to do it still today, but I'm praying a rosary in the mornings, but I'm doing it by chanting it the whole way through.
That helps.
And
Oh yeah,
I think it may just be for where I am right now or just my personality, but actually involving my body more in my prayer
yeah.
life, I think is a good thing because it's very easy for me
What
to
I
like
found.
escape off into my head
Oh,
as opposed to grounding down. Um, and it helps with focus because I'm like now sort of juggling multiple things that I'm focusing on. It's like I'm keeping sort of the chanting going, the
yeah,
body going, keeping the body still. So there's like a level of attention that is going to that, and then there's the forming of the words. It's a level of attention happening to that, and then I'm trying to just imagine or think through the
yeah,
individual mystery, and try to keep that going. And that's most times that's enough to keep me busy.
yeah.
I'll routinely sort of leave, but then it's like if you depart 1,000 times, you come back 1,000 times, and that is the point. There's Yeah, I think we'll end there. I think that's why you have, especially it's primarily in the East, maybe, where you have a lot of these training regimens or disciplines of like just standing still, with like a bent leg or something,
Yep.
standing on one leg. You're doing something slightly uncomfortable, and it forces an aspect of your mind attention to like hold your body in place, and then that can actually free up your mind to actually be more
Mm,
attentive as opposed to just sitting
yeah.
comfortably, because it takes a little bit of effort to do one thing. It helps to train your mind. And this is a conversation for another time. It's like how much we over identify with our mind. We assume that because I think it, it's me, as
Yeah.
opposed to your mind is an aspect of you that actually has to be trained. That's why the East call it your monkey mind. It's like just grabbing onto everything, just running around, chattering, grabbing on
Oh yeah.
everything, throwing bananas, throwing crap at things.
All the
Instead
time.
of calming down and actually being a thing that serves you, the same way that we try to train our bodies to serve
Mm,
and accomplish the goals that we set for it. Or I don't know. There's a whole conversation, because you got to be careful not to be dualist about this stuff.
yeah.
Well, this was a fun, weird conversation. What a great kickoff for maybe the new
Love it.
channel here.
Yeah.
Let's be back next week, friends. If you have thoughts or questions about anything, which I'm sure you've got to, because we like to cover all kinds of stuff, as
Yeah.
we try to make sense of what it means to be young dads making sense of the world and doing good, and loving fiction, and just providing for our families, and at the same time not losing our sense of self, which
Yeah.
is surprisingly hard to do. So that's why we have these conversations. If they're helpful, say hi in the comments. It's always good to meet you. Hit the like button, maybe subscribe, help us reach, I don't know, 3
Yeah.
subscribers. Let's see what happens.
Share with a friend.
There you go. Have a great week. God bless you all. Catch you later.